Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. Thank you again, Hannah, for the beautiful music. That was amazing, as always. And thank you all for your patience. We've had a hard go here in the past half an hour or so trying to get things working. For some reason, it seems like nothing was working. I just came in to the studio ready to hit the live button, and it's like none of the cameras were working at all. And then after that, the live chat wasn't working, and it's like, well, I was scrambling around as much as you can possibly imagine, trying to get things working. But lo and behold, I think it is working now. So thank you all for your patience in the meantime. I appreciate that. You know, when we go live so often like this, sometimes we get those kind of quirks, in the system. Anyways. All right, welcome everyone. In the live chat, we have Calamanto says shalom to all. Felix says hi. Chipmunk says shalom, everyone. Al says shalom, everyone. Seek the Lord says shalom. Chipmunk says wonderful job, Hannah. Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome to y'all. Blessings to you and your families. And thank you, Chipmunk, on behalf of Hannah as well. All right, so we're going to continue with Numbers chapter 31, where we left off last night. I pray that everything that we share here today would be a great blessing to you. Increase your knowledge of the Scriptures, your knowledge of the things of heaven, your relationship with God, and your knowledge of the truth. Amen, amen, amen. All right, share the live stream if you know of anybody that would be interested in joining us. Okay, let's begin where we left off last night. Numbers chapter 31, and starting at verse 25. On the left-hand side, the WEB translation, English translation, of course, from the Masoretic Hebrew text. On the right-hand side, we have the Brenton English translation of the Greek Septuagint, which is much older. I'll start with the Masoretic text, Numbers 31, starting with verse 25. It says, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Count the plunder that was taken both of man and of animal, you and Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the fathers' households of the congregation. The Septuagint says, And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the sum of the spoils of the captivity, both of man and beast, you and Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the families of the congregation. So, differences here, we got heads of the fathers' households, Masoretic text, versus heads of the families in the Septuagint. Verse 27, 28, Masoretic text, and divide the plunder into two parts between the men skilled in war who went out to battle and all the congregation. Levy a tribute to Yahweh of the men of war who went out to battle, 1 soul of 500 of the persons, of the cattle, of the donkeys, of the flocks. The Septuagint. So we got a fair amount of words here compared to the Masoretic. It's a little bit more verbal. The Septuagint says, And you shall divide the spoils between the warriors that went out to battle and the whole congregation. And you shall take a tribute for the Lord from the warriors that went out to battle. So again, there's the warriors that went out to battle as opposed to the Masoretic, the men of war who went out to battle. Pretty much the same, just different ways of saying it. Septuagint, 1 soul out of 500 from the men, from the cattle, from even the oxen, from the sheep, and from the donkeys, and you shall take from their half. You shall take from their half. So it says, you shall take from their half, and the Masoretic says, and of the flocks. So that's quite different. Verse 29, take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest for Yahweh's wave offering. Okay, so it seems to me like the Masoretic text stopped at where it says flocks, or added flocks, because we don't have that in the Septuagint. And the Septuagint, verse 28 talks about taking from their half, but not in verse 28 from the Masoretic text. It's verse 29. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest for Yahweh's wave offering. Okay, verse 30. Of the children of Israel's half, this is Masoretic text, you shall take one drawn out of every 50 of the persons of the cattle, of the donkeys, and of the flocks, and of all the livestock, and give them to the Levites who perform the duty of Yahweh's tabernacle. Verse 30 of the the Septuagint. And from the half belonging to the children of Israel, you shall take 1 in 50 from the men, from the oxen, from the sheep, from the donkeys. Now it says sheep here and then flocks in the Masoretic text, and from all the cattle. And you shall give them to the Levites that keep the charges in the tabernacle of the Lord. That keep the charges in the tabernacle of the Lord. That's in the Septuagint. In the Masoretic, it just says, who perform the duty of Yahweh's tabernacle. Verse 31, Masoretic text, Moses and Eleazar, the priest, did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Septuagint, Moses and Eleazar, the priest, did as the Lord commanded Moses. Pretty much the same there. Verse 32, 33, Masoretic text, now the plunder, over and above the booty which the men of war took, was 675,000 sheep, 72,000 head of cattle. Septuagint, and that which remained of the spoil which the warriors took was of the sheep 675,000. Verse 3, and oxen 72,000. Okay. Masoretic, verse 34, 35, 1,000 donkeys and 2,000 persons in all. And 32,000 persons in all. Of the women who had not known man by lying with him. Okay, so here it says 61,000 donkeys. Now the Septuagint also says 61,000 donkeys. Verse 35, and the Septuagint says, and persons of women who had not known lying with man, all the souls, 32,000. Verse 36, 37 from the Masoretic text, the half, which was the portion of those who went out to war, was in number 337,500 sheep, and Yahweh's tribute of the sheep was 675. The Septuagint says, and the half, even the portion of them that went out to war from the number of the sheep, was 337,500. And the tribute to the Lord from the sheep was 675. Right on par there. Verse 38, 39, Masoretic text. The cattle were 36,000, of which Yahweh's tribute was 72. The donkeys were 32,000 or 30,500, of which Yahweh's tribute was 61. 38:39 of the Septuagint, and the oxen 630,000, and the tribute of the Lord 72, and the donkeys 30,500, and the tribute to the Lord 61. Verse 40, Masoretic text, the persons were 16,000, of whom Yahweh's tribute was 32 persons. Moses gave the tribute, which was Yahweh's wave offering, to Eleazar the priest, as Yahweh commanded Moses. Septuagint, and the persons 16,000, and the tribute of them to the Lord 32 souls. And Moses gave the tribute to the Lord, the heave offering of God, to Eleazar the priest, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 42, 43, Masoretic text, of the children of Israel's half, which Moses divided off from the men who fought, now the congregation's half was 337,500 sheep. Septuagint, from the half belonging to the children of Israel, whom Moses separated from the men of war, and the half taken from the sheep belonging to the congregation was 337,500. 44, 45, 46, Masoretic text. 36,000 head of cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 persons. Septuagint, and the oxen 36,000, the donkeys 30,500, and persons 16,000. Verse 47. Masoretic text, even the children of Israel's half, Moses took one drawn out of every 50, both of man and of animal, and gave them to the Levites, who performed the duty of Yahweh's tabernacle, as Yahweh commanded Moses. Septuagint, and Moses took of the half belonging to the children of Israel the 50th part of men and of cattle, and he gave them to the Levites, who keep the charges of the tabernacle of the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. Okay. All right. See what we have here in the live chat. Chipmunk says, where are they keeping all these animals and the food to eat? Yeah, that's a very good question. That is a massive amount of animals. So it seems like there was a whole lot more animals than there were people. And the food for them to eat, too. The animals and the people, that would have been absolutely unimaginable. Yeah. Can you imagine? Rick says green manna 43. Green manna 43. All right, Rick. Welcome, guys, on TikTok. Welcome, Metro, Lion and Bull. Welcome. We are reading through the scriptures. We're in the middle of a series on the book of Numbers. And we're doing Numbers chapter 31. We're on verse 48 right now. Rick says, maybe the wilderness wasn't how we imagine it. At one time, the Sahara had water as well as in Mitzrayim. Yeah, you know what? What I was thinking about too is, well, thanks, Rick. What I was thinking about is that some critics, if you will, some critics do not believe that the Exodus was, that really happened. They don't believe that it was historical. And one of their one of their arguments that they use is that, out of all the animals and people that lived in those days, out of all the, things that they could have left behind, whether the animals, it'd be like, did they leave the bones of the animals behind? So they say, well, there was no, there's no evidence whatsoever that the children of Israel were in the wilderness. No evidence, no bones, no graves, nothing left behind, no tools, no materials of any sort left behind at all. I do not necessarily believe that is a really good, I don't believe that that's a good argument. And the reason being is because in some places in the world, I know that some places do not have scavenger animals that would eat bones and such. But I think that some places do. I understand that there's a bird that is kind of native to around that area that's called the bone eater. And this bird is known as being a very voracious species of bird that literally would eat, bones of like massive amount of bones, like just an incredible amount. Like you wonder how this bird could even swallow some of these huge bones, but apparently they can. That could have been the reason why that they didn't find any bones, or perhaps that perhaps they cleaned up very well. Perhaps they weren't litter bugs in the wilderness. Where I live, I remember I used to spend a fair amount of time in the woods, if you will. I used to spend a fair amount of time in various bushes, woods, if you will, that have carving trails in these woods and such. That when I was quite younger, and I know that there are a lot of different wild animals around here, like where I live. All kinds of wild animals. And I've always wondered why, with all these wild animals, I have never seen bones or any kind of evidence that these animals, existed in this, where I am, in this part of in this neck of the woods, if you will. I've always wondered, I'm thinking, all the different animals there's lots of different wild animals, out, around where I live. And yet with all of the wild animals, I have never seen any bones out in the woods and, in the quote unquote wilderness, if you will. I've never seen any bones. So apparently there must be some animals that would be eating those bones. Some of the animals around here are fairly good size, like some of the deer and such are fairly good size. And every once in a while you see a lot of deer. Yeah, so I don't think that that's a good argument, really, in my estimation, right now, that the Exodus did not happen literally, historically. I think that, as far as I know, it did happen. It's just that, just because we don't have evidence that they were there doesn't mean that they weren't there. I can think about how many places that I've been, all around North America. And you could say, Christopher, you said you were here, you were there. I don't see any evidence of that. Well, guess what? You're probably not going to see any evidence of that. But I was there, you know? Rick says bones. Yeah. Bones. Chipmunk says that's where the song "She's a Man-Eater" came from. Well, there you go. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, she's a man-eater. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Chipmunk. Welcome over there on TikTok, Psychology. Okay. All right, let's continue here. Verse 48, excuse me. The officers who were over the thousands of the army, the captains of thousands, and the captains of hundreds came near to Moses. They said to Moses, "Your servants have taken the sum of the men of war who are under our command, and there lacks not one man of us." Septuagint. Of all those who were appointed to be officers of thousands of the host, captains of the thousands and captains of hundreds approached Moses and said to Moses, so here we have "and said to Moses" in verse 48, and again in the Masoretic text we have that in verse 49. So it's split up differently. The original text did not have chapters and verses, so I mean it's just the whoever it was that was putting these like the Bible publishers, if you will, the translators, if you will, that decided to divide up these books in chapters and verses like they did. So that's the reason why we have them the way we have it like this now. You notice in Luke chapter 4, for example, when Jesus, it says he went to the synagogue as his custom was, and then it was his turn to read the scriptures, and they handed him the scroll of Isaiah, and it says that he found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." It doesn't say that he turned, to Isaiah chapter, 61. It doesn't say that he turned to it. It doesn't say anything about chapters or verses because there were no chapters and verses. Chapters and verses are a relatively new thing, all things considered. So whoever is in charge of, whoever was looking after the chapters and verses division of the Septuagint did it differently than that of the ones of the Masoretic text here on the left-hand side. Okay, moving on. The Septuagint says, verse 49, "Your servants have taken the sum of the men of war with us, and not one is missing." All right. Verse 50, Masoretic text, "We have brought Yahweh's offering, what every man found, gold ornaments, armlets, bracelets, signet rings, earrings, necklaces, to make atonement for our souls before Yahweh." Septuagint, "And we have brought our gift to the Lord. Every man who has found an article of gold, whether an armlet or a chain or a ring or a bracelet or a clasp of hair." Clasp of hair. "To make atonement for us before the Lord." Now, this is interesting as well. So notice there's nothing listed here that is like contains blood, if you will. There's no blood sacrifices here at all. So on the left-hand side over here, the Masoretic text, the list of items is a little bit different, but there's still no blood sacrifices. Yet it says that these offerings made atonement before the Lord. So this is a really good another example of a place in where in the scriptures where atonement is made without blood. We have, actually, Numbers is really good for this. the book of Numbers tells us about how incense, if you will, makes atonement, which would be symbolic of prayer. And here we have this making atonement as well. Very, very interesting stuff. So this goes against the typical Christian narrative that you must have blood in order to have atonement, because that's the law of God. That's to fulfill the law of God. And if you don't have a blood sacrifice, you cannot find atonement for your soul, because it's the blood that makes atonement for your soul. That's their argument. But that's not what the scriptures here say. Verse 51, 52, Masoretic text. Moses and Eleazar the priest took their gold, even all worked jewels. All the gold of the wave offering that they offered up to Yahweh, of the captains of thousands, of the captains of hundreds, was 16,750 shekels. Verse 51, 52, Septuagint. And Moses and Eleazar took the gold from them, even every wrought article, and all the wrought gold, even the offering that they offered to the Lord, was 16,750 shekels from the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds. There you go. There's the offering to Yahweh, to the Lord, without blood again. Verse 53, verse 54, Masoretic text. The men of war had taken booty, every man for himself. Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold of the captains of thousands and of hundreds and brought it into the tent of meeting for a memorial for the children of Israel before Yahweh. So this is very, very much reminiscent of what we read in Exodus chapter 30. It talks about the atonement money, if you will. And as that money is given, that makes an atonement, that literally by definition makes an atonement for their souls. And this is very much like that as well. The Septuagint says in verse 53, "For the men of war took plunder, every one for himself, and Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold from the captains of thousands and captains of hundreds, and brought the vessels into the tabernacle of witness, a memorial of the children of Israel before the Lord." Yeah, so it says that kind of the very same kind of thing as well in Exodus chapter 30, talking about the atonement money, giving the atonement money to make atonement for your soul, and then that brings up a memorial before God in your name. Acts chapter 10 also talks about this. Yes, New Testament, quote unquote, New Testament age, New Testament era, New Testament church. Still, that whole thing about the giving of alms that would cause your name to be brought up before God as a memorial is also in is also in the New Testament, Acts chapter 10. Which corresponds to specifically Exodus chapter 30, but again here in Numbers chapter 31 is very similar to that as well. All right, Numbers chapter 32. Numbers chapter 32, folks. Numbers chapter 32. Getting very close to the end. Getting very close to the end of the book. Verse 1, Masoretic text. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of livestock. No kidding. They saw the land of Yazer and the land of Gilead. Both, behold, the place was a place for livestock. Septuagint. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad. And this word Gad in the Hebrew is more pronounced like God. But again, I'm not going to pronounce it in the Hebrew way just for the sake of clarity and conventional speak, if you will. If I start saying the children of God, I think that a lot of people would misunderstand me instead of saying the children of Gad. So I'll stick with the children of Gad here. Children of Gad. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a multitude of cattle, very great. And they saw the land of Yazer and the land of Galad. And the place was a place for cattle. Verse 2 and 3. Masoretic text. The children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spoke to Moses and to Eleazar the priest and to the princes of the congregation, saying, Ataroth, Dibon, Yezer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eleala, Sebam, Nebo, and Baon. And Numbers, chapter 32, verse 2 in the Septuagint. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad came. Now, this reminds me too, like, you can have two different names pronounced the exact same way, and it means two completely different things. You can have God here, okay? The children of God, the tribe of God. That's the way that it would be pronounced in the Hebrew. Now, can you imagine somebody arguing that Gad was actually God? You know what I mean? Wouldn't that be ridiculous to argue that Gad was God? Gad's not God, and the children of Gad are not necessarily the children of God. The tribe of Gad doesn't necessarily mean the tribe of God, okay? Gad's wife doesn't correspond to God's wife. So what's my point here? My point is you can have the same pronunciation and mean two completely different things. Like how some people say that Jesus and Zeus are related. Completely different things. Just because it may sound a little bit similar doesn't mean anything that they have any kind of relation whatsoever. So here it is with Gad and God as well. The real way to pronounce is God. But in English, God is God, not Gad. You see what I'm saying? It's like how there are many words in different languages that are all pronounced the same way, but yet they mean the opposite. Did you guys know that? There are words that are pronounced the same way, yet they mean the opposite. Like, for example, we have in the English, gift, for example. Gift, you give a gift, okay? Oh, that was a great gift. Well, in German, the word gift means poison. So, does that mean that if you give a gift, you always give poison? No, of course not. Of course not. It's completely different things. They are pronounced exactly the same way. Gift and gift, it's the same word, so to speak, pronunciation-wise, but they mean completely different things. So again, just because it's like some people have, they have their nose out of joint about God or Lord or Jesus or this kind of stuff. Just because it may sound like something else, just because that could be used in another context to mean something not so good, that doesn't mean that it has any relation at all. The word pain, for example, is another example. Of course, we know what pain is, and I've been having too much pains here in the past 2 or 3 months. I've been having way too much pains, but right now I'm okay. Earlier today it wasn't that good, though, I tell you that much. But I've been having too much pain. But did you know that the word pain in French means bread? So bread would be something positive, right? It's a source of life, if you will, source of nutrition. But in English, pain is something negative. The pronunciation is the same. The word hell is another word. We all know what hell, at least traditionally, what it means, what it conveys, place of torment, suffering. But in German, hell means light, bright. It's positive. It's a positive thing. In English, it's a negative thing. In German, it's a positive thing. Mist is another one. Mist in English. We all know what mist is. Fog, haze. Fog. Well, in German, it means manure. Mist means manure. Opa. Opa is another good example. Opa in Dutch means grandfather. Opa, if you say Opa in Southeast Asia, it means the opposite. It means grandmother. So just because you call someone Opa, grandfather, doesn't mean that grandfather is a grandmother. You see what I'm saying? So you can have the same title or the same name, if you will, or the same word that sounds the same as something else. Do not be fooled into thinking that it means, because you got these people that say, like, well, Lord means this and Lord that, like two completely different things. Or again, you got Jesus as well. You got people that make the argument that Jesus has this Zeus thing going on. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Just because it may sound the same doesn't necessarily mean that it has anything to do with each other. Just like all these names and words and titles that I mentioned in the past few minutes here. It's like the etymological fallacy. So let's not fall into that fallacy. And same with God. God. Right? So the children of God here, G-A-D, it doesn't necessarily mean the children of Gad. And Gad does not mean God, even though it's pronounced God. God, so we have God and God. We have God over here and God over there, but the God over here has nothing to do with the God. You can say God, had X number of children, and this is his wife. But that doesn't mean God, right? So again, let's be careful not to fall into that trap. Okay, let's move on here. We have, again, verse 2, the children of God, Gad. Septuagint, the children of Reuben and the children of God came. Gad, okay? And spoke to Moses and to Eleazar the priest and to the princes of the congregation, saying, okay, now, verses 3 and 4 from the Masoretic text. Excuse me. Ataroth, Dibon, Yazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliala, Sebam, Nebo, Beon. The land which Yahweh struck before the congregation of Israel is a land for livestock, and your servants have livestock. And again, the Septuagint, Ataroth, Dibon, Yazer, Namrah, and Esabon, Eliel, Sebama, Nebo, and Bayan. The land which the Lord has delivered up before the children of Israel is pasture land, and your servants have cattle. Verse 5, they said, if we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants for a possession. Don't bring us over the Jordan. Verse 5, Septuagint. And they said, if we have found grace in your sight, let this land be given to your servants for a possession, and do not cause us to pass over Jordan. Verse 6 and 7, Masoretic text. Moses said to the children of Gad, and to the children of Reuben, shall your brothers go to war while you sit here? Why do you discourage the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which Yahweh has given them? Septuagint, and Moses said to the sons of Gad, and the sons of Reuben, shall your brothers go to war and you sit here? And why do you pervert the minds of the children of Israel that they should not cross over into the land which the Lord gives them? Verse 8 and 9, Masoretic text. Your fathers did so when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For when they went up to the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel, that they should not go into the land which Yahweh had given them. Septuagint. Did not your fathers thus, when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land? And they went up to the valley of the cluster and spied out the land, and turned aside the heart of the children of Israel, and they should not go in the land which the Lord gave them. Verses 10 and 11, Masoretic text. Yahweh's anger burned in that day, and he swore, saying, surely none of the men who came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. Septuagint. And the Lord was very angry in that day, and sware, saying, surely these men who came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward, who know good and evil, shall not see the land which I swear to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob, for they have not closely followed after me. Welcome, guys, on TikTok. Verse 12 and 13, Masoretic text, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite. So Caleb would be Kalev in the Hebrew, which would mean dog. The name Caleb means dog. Who's going to name their child dog? I wonder why Caleb's parents named him Dog. Now, can you imagine some of the Christians who take everything super literally? Can you imagine them saying, well, hey, maybe Caleb was a literal dog? I don't think he was, by the way. I'm just being stupid. So, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite. and Joshua the son of Nun, because they have followed Yahweh completely. Yahweh's anger burned against Israel and made them wander back and forth in the wilderness 40 years until all the generation who had done evil in Yahweh's sight was consumed. Verse 12 and 13 of the Septuagint, save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who was set apart, and Joshua, the son of Nun. For they closely followed after the Lord, and the Lord was very angry with Israel. And for 40 years he caused them to wander in the wilderness until all the generation which did evil in the sight of the Lord was extinct. Isn't that a weird? That's a weird way of putting it. Extinct. Verse 14 and 15, Masoretic text. Behold, you have risen up in your father's place, an increase of sinful men, to increase the fierce anger of Yahweh toward Israel. For if you turn away after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all these people. Septuagint 14 and 15, behold, you are risen up in the room of your fathers, a combination of sinful men, to increase yet farther the fierce wrath of the Lord against Israel. For you will turn away from him to desert him, yet once more in the wilderness, and you will sin against this whole congregation. Welcome, guys, on TikTok. We are studying the scriptures, reading the scriptures here, talking about it verse by verse, word by word here. Numbers chapter 32, verse 16. 16 and 17, Masoretic text. They came near to him and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our livestock and cities for our little ones, but we ourselves will be ready armed to go before the children of Israel until we have brought them to their place. Our little ones shall dwell in the fortified cities because of the inhabitants of the land. Septuagint says, and they came to him and said, we will build here folds for our cattle and cities for our possessions, and we will arm ourselves and go as an advance guard before the children of Israel until we shall have brought them into their place, and our possessions shall remain in walled cities because of the inhabitants of the land. 18 and 19, Masoretic text. We will not return to our houses until the children of Israel have all received their inheritance. For we will not inherit them. For we will not inherit with them on the other side of the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance has come to us on this side of the Jordan eastward. Septuagint, we will not return to our houses till the children of Israel shall have been distributed, each to his inheritance, and we will not any longer inherit with them from the other side of the Jordan and onwards, because we have our full inheritance on the side beyond Jordan eastward. Verse 20-21, Masoretic text. Moses said to them, if you will do this thing, if you will arm yourselves to go before Yahweh to the war, and every one of your armed men will pass over the Jordan before Yahweh until he has driven out his enemies from before him. Septuagint. And Moses said to them, if you will do according to these words, if you will arm yourselves before the Lord for battle, and every one of you will pass over Jordan fully armed before the Lord until his enemy be destroyed from before his face. Verses 22-23, Masoretic text. And the land is subdued before Yahweh, and afterward you shall return and be clear of obligation to Yahweh and to Israel. Then this land shall be your possession before Yahweh. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against Yahweh, and be sure your sin will find you out. I know some of the old-fashioned preachers of the old days, they would always preach on this, be sure your sin will find you out. Be sure your sin will find you out. (22, 23). Septuagint. And the land shall be divided before the Lord. Then afterwards you shall return and be guiltless before the Lord. And as regards Israel, and this land shall be to you for a possession before the Lord. But if you will not do so, you will sin against the Lord, and you shall know your sin when affliction shall come upon you. Verse 24. Masoretic text, build cities for your little ones and folds for your sheep, and do that which has proceeded out of your mouth. Septuagint, and you shall build for yourselves cities for your store. So again, notice the Septuagint always, I should say, maybe not always, but many times when it says little ones, in the WEB translation, it says your store, for your store, in the Septuagint. Now that's quite different. Little ones versus store. And you shall build for yourselves cities for your store, and folds for your cattle, and you shall do that which proceeds out of your mouth. Verse 25, 26, Masoretic text. The children of Gad and the children of Reuben spoke to Moses, saying, your servants will do as my Lord commands. Your little ones, I just saw over here again, Septuagint says, our store. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and our livestock shall be there in the cities of Gilead. Verse 27, but your servants will pass over every man who is armed for war before Yahweh to battle, as my Lord says. Septuagint says, and the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad spoke to Moses, saying, your servants will do as our Lord commands. Our store and our wives and all our cattle shall be in the cities of Galaad. But your servants will go over all armed and set in order before the Lord to battle, as our Lord says. Verse 28, Masoretic text. So Moses commanded concerning them to Eleazar the priest, and to Joshua son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers' households of the tribes of the children of Israel. Verse 28 of the Septuagint, and Moses appointed to them for judges Eleazar the priest, and Joshua son of Nun, and the chiefs of the families of the tribes of Israel. So this phrase for judges is in italics, which means it's not in the Septuagint manuscript. So the translators added that in there. Verse 29, Masoretic text. Moses said to them, if the children of Gad and the children of Reuben will pass with you over the Jordan, every man who is armed to battle before Yahweh, and the land is subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for possession. Septuagint. And Moses said to them, if the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad will pass over Jordan with you, everyone armed for war before the Lord, and you shall subdue the land before you, then you shall give to them the land of Galaad for possession. Well, look at the difference between the length of verse 30 in the Masoretic and the length of verse 30 in the Septuagint. Quite a difference. More than double the size. So the Masoretic text on the left-hand side says, "But if they will not pass over you or over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan." The Septuagint says, "But if they will not pass over armed with you to war before the Lord," so this whole phrase here, "to war before the Lord," is not found in the Masoretic text, "then shall you cause to pass over their possessions and their wives and their cattle before into the land of Canaan, and they shall inherit with you in the land of Canaan." Wow. So this whole thing really. So, you know what? Everything, all of this is missing from the Masoretic text. All of that. "With you to war before the Lord, then shall you cause to pass over their possessions and their wives and their cattle before you into the land of Canaan." And then it picks up with the Masoretic. "And they shall inherit with you in the land of Canaan." Verse 31, 32. "The children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, As Yahweh has said to your servants, so we will do. We will pass over armed before Yahweh into the land of Canaan, and the possession of our inheritance shall remain with us beyond the Jordan." Septuagint. "And the sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad answered, saying, Whatsoever the Lord says to his servants, that we will do. That we will do. We will go over armed before the Lord into the land of Canaan, and you shall give us our inheritance beyond the Jordan." Verse 33, Masoretic text. "Moses gave to them, even to the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land, according to its cities and borders, even the cities of the surrounding land." Septuagint. "And Moses gave to them, even to the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, of the sons of Joseph." So Septuagint has plural, "of the sons of Joseph," whereas the Masoretic has singular, "Manasseh, the son of Joseph." Septuagint, "the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, and the land and its cities with its coasts, the cities of the land round about." Verse 34, 35, and 36, Masoretic text. "The children of Gad built Dibon, Ataroth, Aroer, Atroth, Shofan, Yezer, Yogbeha, Beth Nimrah, Beth Haran, fortified cities, and folds for sheep." The Septuagint says, "And the sons of Gad built Dibon, and Ataroth, and Aroer, and Sophar." So in the Masoretic, it's Atroth Shofan. In the Septuagint, it's Sophar. Quite different. All right. We got several characters different here. "And Yezer, and they set them up." So it says, "and they set them up." Actually, I'll highlight Atroth, because Atroth is not found in the Septuagint. "And they set them up." So it says, and they set them up here, but in the Masoretic it says Yogbeha. Does Yogbeha mean set them up? Or is this a completely different word? Serious question here. What does Yogbeha mean? So this is Numbers 32, 35. Let's have a peek over here. Numbers 32, 35. And let's look into this word, Yogbeha. What does this mean? Lofty. Lofty. So that would mean set them up then. Right. So lofty, that carries the connotation of being set up, right? Like you're set up, you're lofty. So yeah, so this is just more or less, it's not a difference per se. So it is more or less a transliteration versus a translation. Anyways, verse 36, 37, 38, Masoretic text. Beth Nimrah, Beth Haran, fortified cities and folds for sheep. The children of Reuben built Heshbon, Eliah, Eliala, Kiriathaim, Nebo, Baal, Maon, their names being changed, and Sibmah. They gave other names to the cities which they built. Septuagint says, and Namram versus Nimrah. Namram and Betharan, strong cities and folds for sheep. The sons of Reuben built Eshbon and Eliel and Kiriatham and Baal Meon, surrounded with walls. So it says surrounded here. Now with walls, it's with walls is in italics, which means it's not in the original text, but surrounded versus their names being changed. Now that's different. Surrounded certainly means something different than names being changed. Still can't get that one there. Let me see if I can. Oops, what am I doing here? There we go. Moving on, Septuagint, and Sebama, and they called the names of the cities which they built after their own names. So again, it's different than what it says in the Masoretic. They gave other names to the cities which they built. It doesn't say that they gave names after their own names. So that's quite a bit different as well. Not necessarily a contradiction, but it is different. This is being stubborn on me here. Okay, verse 39 to 40, it says, Masoretic text, the children of Machir. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, took it, and dispossessed the Amorites who were therein. And Moses gave Gilead to Machir, the son of Manasseh, and he lived therein. Septuagint. And a son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and took it and destroyed the Amorite who dwelt in it. And Moses gave Gilead to Machir, the son of Manasseh, and he dwelt there. Verse 41, 42, Masoretic text. Yair, the son of Manasseh, went and took its villages and called them Havoth Yair. Noba went and took Kenath and its villages and called it Noba, after his own name. So now it talks about naming them after their own names. Verse 41, 42, Septuagint, and Yair, the son of Manasseh, went and took their villages and called them the villages of Yair. And Nabo went and took Kaath and her villages and called them Naboth after his name. Numbers chapter 33. But just before we get into that, we have Chipmunk says, well, that brings new meaning to the dog left you a gift. Well, yeah, that would. Definitely. And we got the night owl with us. Going Nowhere says, nightly greetings. Greetings, Going Nowhere. Good to see you. Blessings to you and yours. Numbers chapter 33. Okay. Numbers chapter 33. We're reading through the scriptures, folks. Welcome, guys, over there on TikTok as well. Blessings to you and your families. We're reading through the scriptures word for word. This is a nightly, daily, if you will, pretty much almost every day, which we're reading through the scriptures, going through every single word of both the canonical and non-canonical texts, everything that surround that of the Holy Scriptures. All right, Numbers chapter 33, verse 1, Masoretic text. These are the journeys of the children of Israel when they went out of the land of Egypt by their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. Septuagint, these are the stages, not journeys, but stages of the children of Israel as they went out of the land of Egypt with their hosts by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Verse 2, Masoretic. Moses wrote the starting points of their journeys by the commandment of Yahweh. These are their journeys according to their starting points. Septuagint, and Moses wrote their removals and their stages by the word of the Lord, and these are the stages of their journeying. Quite a bit different wording we have here. Verse 3, Masoretic text. And they traveled from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the next day after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. Verse 3 from the Septuagint. They departed from Ramesses, and in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the day after the Passover, the children of Israel went forth with a high hand before all the Egyptians. So notice it says before all the Egyptians in the Septuagint, whereas in the WEB it's in the sight of all the Egyptians. So I find that intriguing because when you see, before the Lord, for example, you do this before the Lord, you do that before Moses, means in the sight of, right? In the sight of. Verse 4, while the Egyptians were burying their firstborn, whom Yahweh had struck among them, Yahweh also executed judgments on their gods. Septuagint, the Egyptians buried those that died of them, even all that the Lord smote. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt, also the Lord executed vengeance on their gods. Executed vengeance versus executed judgments. Verse 5, Septuagint, verse 5 and 6, the children of Israel traveled from Ramses and encamped at Sukkot. They traveled from Sukkot and encamped at Etham, which is in the edge of the wilderness. Septuagint, and the children of Israel departed from Ramses and encamped in Socchoth, Socchoth. I'll say Sukkot anyway. And they departed from Sukkot and encamped at Buthan. Buthan? Well, the Masoretic says Etham. Etham versus Buthan. Etham versus Buthan. Which is part of the wilderness, it says here. I gotta let TikTok know that I'm still alive. Okay. Verse 7, Masoretic text, they traveled from Etham and turned back to Pihahiroth, which is before Baal Zephon, and they encamped before Migdol. Septuagint, and they departed from Buthan and encamped at the mouth of Eroth. So it's not Pihahiroth, but rather Eroth, the mouth of Eroth, encamped at. So the Masoretic says turn back to Pihahiroth, and the Septuagint says encamped at the mouth of Eroth. So something tells me probably this Pihahiroth means at the mouth of Eroth. Let's have a look at the text here again. So we're at Numbers 33, verse 7. Have a look at the interlinear. Pihahiroth. The mouth of the gorges. That's right. So it says right here, it means the mouth of the gorges. So there you go. There you go. So this means, so once again, we have the Septuagint more of a translation, whereas the Masoretic WEB translation more of a transliteration. And the Septuagint goes on to say, which is opposite Baal Zephon and encamped opposite Migdol. Verse 8, Masoretic text. They traveled from before Pi-hahiroth and crossed through the middle of the sea into the wilderness. They went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and encamped at Marah. Septuagint, and they departed from before Eroth. And crossed the middle of the sea into the wilderness, and they went a journey of 3 days through the wilderness, and encamped at Picrea? That's so different. So the Masoretic says they went 3 days journey in the wilderness of Etham, 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 M as in Mary, and encamped at Marah. But the Septuagint just says they went a journey of 3 days through the wilderness. It doesn't say Etham. It says they encamped at Picrea, not Marah. Different. Verse 9. They traveled through Marah and came to Elim, and in Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there. Septuagint, and they departed from, here we go again, Picrea, and came to Elim. So here we have Elim. And in Elim were 12 fountains of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. So it says they encamped there by the water. That's not found in the Masoretic text. Verse 10 and 11 of the Masoretic text, they traveled from Elim and encamped by the Red Sea. They traveled from the Red Sea and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. Septuagint, and they departed from Elim and encamped by the Red Sea. And they departed from the Red Sea and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. Verse 12, 13, and 14, they traveled from the wilderness of Sin and encamped at Dophkah. They traveled from Dophkah and encamped at Alush. They traveled from Alush and encamped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. I remember Paul said that this is spiritual water. Verse 12, Septuagint, and they departed from the wilderness of Sin and encamped at Raphakah. So not Dophkah, but Raphakah. Again, we have the Resh and the Dalet being mixed up. Remember that? How the Resh and the Dalet are so similar. Remember this one here? The left-hand side, we have the Dalet, which would be the D, and the right-hand side here is the Resh. The only difference being really is that corner of that letter. So that would be, so that was probably what happened there as well. When we got the D, Pei, and you see we got three consonants there, but the first one, the D, is what was mixed up with the Resh. So Raphakah versus Dophkah. So they departed from Raphakah and encamped in Elus in verse 13 of the Septuagint. Verse 14, Septuagint, they departed from Elus and encamped at Raphidim. Again, we have the N, noon, versus the M, mem, being mixed up here as well. And there was no water for the people to drink, it says here. Verse 15 and 16, Masoretic text. They traveled from Rephidim and encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. They traveled from the wilderness of Sinai and encamped at Kibroth Hatava. The Septuagint, it says, and they departed from Rephidim, not Rephidim, but Rephidim, and encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. And they departed from the wilderness of Sinai and encamped at the graves of lust. So Kibroth Hatava must mean the graves of lust. Verse 17, 18, and 19, Masoretic text. They traveled from Kibroth Hatava and encamped at Hazeroth. They traveled from Hazeroth and encamped at Rithma. They traveled from Rithma and encamped at Rimmon Perez. Septuagint, they departed from the graves of lust and encamped at Asaroth. And they departed from Asaroth and encamped at Rathama. They departed from Rathama and encamped at Rimmon Perez. Verse 20, 21, 22, Masoretic text. They traveled from Rimmon Perez and encamped at Libnah. They traveled from Libnah and encamped at Risa. They traveled from Risa and encamped at Kehelatha. Verse 21 to 20, or 20 to 22 in the Septuagint. They departed from Rimmon Perez and encamped at Lebona. They departed from Lebona and encamped at Resan. So we have Resan, whereas in the Masoretic it's simply Risa. Verse 22 to 24, Masoretic text. They traveled from Risa and encamped at Kehelatha. They traveled from Kehelatha and encamped at Mount Shapher. They traveled from Mount Shapher and encamped at Haradah. Septuagint, they departed from Resan. They encamped at Machalath. So Machalath in the Septuagint versus Kehelatha in the Masoretic. Verse 23, and they departed from Machela and encamped in Sephar. Verse 23 of the Masoretic, they traveled from Kehelatha and encamped at Mount Shapher. Verse 24, 25, 26, Masoretic text, they traveled from Mount Shapher and encamped at Haradah. They traveled from Haradah and encamped at Machalath. They traveled from Machalath and encamped at Tahath. (24 to 26) Septuagint, and they departed from Sephar and encamped at Karadath. They departed from Karadath and encamped at Machalath. They departed from Machalath and encamped at Kataath. Kataath versus Tahath. Kataath. Verse 27, 28, 29, Masoretic text. And we'll finish up this paragraph. 27, 28, 29, they traveled from Tahath and encamped at Terah. They traveled from Terah and encamped at Mithka. They traveled from Mithka and encamped at Hasmonah. Septuagint, they departed from Kataath So again, instead of Tahath, it's Kata'ath, and encamped at Terath. Terath versus Terah. And they departed from Terath and encamped at Methekah. And they departed from Methekah and encamped at Salmona. Salmona is quite different than Hashmona. Salmona. Verse 30, 31, 32. They traveled from Hashmona and encamped at Maseroth. This is a Masoretic text. They traveled from Maseroth and encamped at Bnei Ya'akan. They traveled from Bnei Ya'akan and encamped at Hor Haggidgad. (30 to 32) Septuagint, and they departed from Salmona and encamped at Maseruth. They departed from Maseruth and encamped at Banea. Camped in Banea. So in the Septuagint, it's Banea, just Banea, whereas in the Masoretic text, it's Bnei Ya'akan. So there's that extra Ya'akan in there. It's not in the Septuagint. Verse 32, the Septuagint, they departed from Banea and encamped in the mountain Gadgad, instead of Haggidgad from the Masoretic text. Verse 33 to 35, Masoretic text, they traveled from Hor Haggidgad and encamped at Yotbatha. They traveled from Yotbatha and encamped at Abrona. They traveled from Abrona and encamped at Ezion Geber. Masoretic text, Septuagint. They departed from the mountain Gadgad, so Gadgad instead of Haggidgad, and encamped at Etabatha. A little bit different than Yotbatha. Or Yotbatha. Verse 34, they departed from Etabatha and encamped at Abrona. They departed from Abrona and encamped in Gezion Geber. The extra G there again. We typically get extra G's here and there throughout the Septuagint. Verse 36, 37, Masoretic text, they traveled from Ezion Geber and encamped at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Z-I-N. They traveled from Kadesh and encamped at Mount Hor in the edge of the land of Edom. Look, we got more words here in the Septuagint. It says, and they traveled from Gezion Geber and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. And they departed from the wilderness of Sin and encamped in the wilderness of Pharan. This is Kadesh. And they departed from Kadesh and encamped in Mount Or. So wait a second here. Let's see what. Okay. So the Masoretic, let's take it step by step here. Masoretic says they traveled from Ezion Geber. Okay. So the Septuagint, they departed from Gezion Geber. Okay. Masoretic, they encamped at Kadesh. In the Septuagint it says, and they encamped in the wilderness of Sin. And they departed from the wilderness of Sin. And they encamped in the wilderness of Pharan. This is Kadesh. So all of this, wilderness of Sin, that's not in the Masoretic text. In the Masoretic text, they just go from Ezion Geber to Kadesh. Not in the Septuagint. In the Septuagint, it's going from Gezion Geber to the wilderness of Sin. And then from the wilderness of Sin to the wilderness of Pharan, which is Kadesh. And they departed from Kadesh in verse 37 and encamped at Mount Or near the land of Edom. Right, lots of differences here in the Septuagint. All right, guys. So, Thank you for the likes there. Free hugs to give. Appreciate that. Blessings to you and your family. All right, so that'll be it for tonight, folks. Tomorrow we will pick it up again, in Numbers chapter 33, where we left off, verse 38. And Lord willing, we'll get into Numbers chapter 34 as well. Moving right along to the end of the book of Numbers. Getting pretty close to that. All right. Okay, guys. So if you haven't already, please leave a like, subscribe, and follow if you haven't already. And Lord willing, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow, same time, same place. Moving on with the book of Numbers. Going Nowhere says, dream a little dream, guys. Dream a little dream. Well, all right. Thank you, Going Nowhere. Blessings to you and yours. Yeah, okay, so we'll see you guys tomorrow. Again, please keep in mind as well, this coming Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m., we have our meeting for the members of the channel. It's going to be it's going to be a private, kind of like a Zoom meeting, just like a lot more of an intimate, casual, we can chat with one another, all that kind of good stuff. It's not going to be broadcast publicly, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just a private thing. The link and the password is already posted in the post section on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, under the posts section of my channel. So yeah, the link is there already with the password for you guys to get in on Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. All right. Rick says, blessings, Bereans. Thank you, Rick. Blessings multiplied back to you. Multiplied to you and your family. Chipmunk says, thank you, Chris, for good study. Get some good rest, everyone. And you too, Hootie. All right. Thank you, Chipmunk. Blessings multiplied to you and yours. Al says, thank you, Chris. Great job on knowing for numbers. Great job on knowing for numbers book, and shalom to you every day. Have a great night all. Thank you. Al, shalom, blessings to you and your family as well. Have a great night. Okay, you guys are awesome. You guys are world changers. Keep on keeping on. Keep on calling on him, and he will show you great and mighty things. Things that you don't know. Jeremiah 33:3. Okay, guys, we'll see you then. Love you guys. Good health and long life to you. And I pray the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance upon you, and give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen. Amen. We'll see you guys tomorrow.